Welcome to the Enchanted Ears podcast,
where we discuss anything and everything Disney.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Joe, and on today's episode, we are ranking our favorite trackless rides.
Yes.
Trackless attractions, maybe, if you will, for Disney. We are recording this ahead of time, so a little inside podcast, a little inside insight into our podcasting. You know, typically throughout the year at some point, something comes up in life, as it does, and there's usually always a week where we're like, we can't get an episode out. Something happens. You probably noticed if you've listened for a long time, every now and then we randomly have a week we miss.
Yeah. And I mean, it could be a number of things, but I mean, it could be that one of us is ill and we don't have a voice, or
something
we go to Disney World and we didn't get a chance to record.
Exactly.
Or or I'm running a race somewhere crazy.
So we are recording this ahead of time to have something in our back pocket whenever we need to release it. So if you're listening to this or you're watching this, just know something happened in life that we couldn't record a podcast. Not necessarily bad.
Yeah, I would say probably don't be concerned.
We were busy. Something happened. We'll be back next week. It's no big deal.
So this is Joe's way of saying there's not going to be any news today.
Exactly.
So don't expect
There is no Disney news because who knows when this is going to get released. We could try to pretend like we know what the news is going to be, but that's never going to work well. So we're going to jump into this here, ranking our favorite trackless rides. So Disney has a number of trackless rides, and I actually think there are more across all of their parks than people even realize. Because some of these, there's a couple in Tokyo Disneyland, and there was one like I didn't even realize was a trackless ride until we kind of rode it and found out more about it. And that is Aquatopia.
Yeah.
Which
it's not something that you would typically think of as a trackless ride, so that's why that's why you wouldn't know it unless you went and you're like, oh wow, that's like not on any kind of track.
Right. I think the other one that isn't like super obvious, again, maybe just walking by it once you ride it, is in Disney California Adventure, Luigi's Rollickin' Roadsters, which is a pretty basic attraction, but it technically is a trackless ride as well. So a list of all of the trackless rides Disney has is Rise of the Resistance, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, Luigi's Rollickin' Roadsters, which we mentioned, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, Pooh's Honey Hunt, Zootopia Hot Pursuit, Aquatopia, Enchanted Tales of Beauty and the Beast, and actually Mystic Manor. I didn't realize that one was a trackless ride either. So again, this is across all of the parks, all the international parks. So we've been on 6 of these in total.
So we've been to Disneyland and Disney World, but we've also been over to Tokyo Disneyland and Disney Sea, but we went there prior to the Beauty and the Beast ride opening. So we've actually been on 6 of these, and the 6 that we've been on are Rise of the Resistance, Ratatouille, Luigi's Rollicking Roadsters, Mickey Minnie's Runaway Rail, Pooh Honey Hunt, and Aquatopia. So those are pretty much what we're going to be focusing on for our rankings.
Yeah, so we're going to rank the 6 we've actually been on, just because it's these rides you have to kind of experience, I feel like, firsthand to get like a true feel for them. Like have watched ride videos of the other 3. So you mentioned Enchanted Tales of Beauty and the Beast, that opened after we went to Tokyo. And then Zootopia Hot Pursuit is in Shanghai. Mystic Manor is in Hong Kong Disney. So those are both of the Chinese parks. We've not been to those parks yet. So while I've seen ride videos of all of them, I feel like when you ride these trackless rides, like there's something special about actually being on them, because like the beauty of them is you don't know where you're going to go, versus like if you're riding the old dark rides in Disney, like you're riding Snow White's Scary Adventures or you're riding Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. They're fun, but you can clearly see where you're going to go. So the element of surprise that happens and kind of spontaneity, you lose. So for me, like I'm going to focus on just the ones I've actually ridden, because I feel like not having ridden the other 3, it's hard for me to kind of rank them, in there.
Yeah, I mean, when you're on those rides, they always incorporate different aspects that maybe you're not expecting. So when you haven't been on them, you don't really know. Like there's certain rides that I'm thinking, like Rise, you can't really quantify what all Rise is able to do if you haven't been on it. So that one is
and just
one.
like the scope and scale of that one. Even I mean, like being in
Yeah,
that
it's
room,
it's hard to
with
fully
the
understand
AT-ATs and everything. Yeah. So starting with your list, kind of least to best.
Yeah. So
Worst to best.
yeah.
Okay.
So I actually have I have for number 6. I have Luigi, the Rollicking Roadsters. I like this ride. I really enjoy riding this ride. This is a ride I would have skipped. So luckily, like our friends Jennifer and Kiefer got us to ride this ride. Having said that, what makes it is the Cars theming and the music, but it is a relatively simple ride. It's very much like the dance portion of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Rail with Daisy.
That's a good point. Like it's a full. If you take that one scene and make it a full
make
attraction.
it a full bigger scale ride. That is what Luigi is. So it's a fun ride, but I don't think that among these other ones it really stands out.
I think the difference there is that it's a different ride every time.
Yeah, that I was gonna say that is the fun part about it, and you don't know what song you're gonna get.
Exactly.
And I think that it taps into that really cool thing that Disney has been doing more and more. And I would be curious if this was the first one to do it. I'm not sure, but of that repeatability, because they have a certain soundtrack that they go with. Like they have that on Mission Breakout where you don't know what song you're gonna get. They also do it with the ride
Cosmic Rewind.
Yeah, Cosmic Rewind. So it kind of ups that repeatability.
Yeah, Cars Land was first.
Yeah, so I would assume that was the first one. So it ups that repeatability factor.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's a really fun ride. But for me, it would probably be the lowest just because it has, I feel like, the least involved. My next ride on the list would be Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. This ride for me was, first of all, I think better in France than the United States.
It's the exact same ride.
Exact same
That's impossible.
ride.
That's impossible.
No, it is. It's the exact same ride, but what kind of frustrated me is in France, I was like, wow, they built this like 10 years ago. It's a really nice ride. And then they rebuilt it in the US, but it's like, I don't know. These are more your flagship parks, and I feel like sometimes whenever we go from back and forth,
you want them to
when you go back and forth
different.
from Walt Disney World to Disneyland, and you start to see some of the things they do over at Disneyland just to make the rides just a little bit better. So I kind of expected that over here, and when you have so much of the ride in front of giant screens, to me that kind of ruins it a little bit. So I think that for me, this ride could have been 1,000,000% better if more of the ride was like the pantry.
1,000,000%.
1,000,000%.
I don't know if that's mathematically possible.
But
I'll take your word for it.
I've crunched the numbers.
You've crunched the numbers and it works? Okay.
Yep.
All right, so Ratatouille is pretty low. That's maybe surprising to people. Not me, but maybe surprising to people. So what's your next one on the list? Kind of moving up.
So Aquatopia is the next one on the list for me. I think that one is surprising. And again, I could make the same argument. You might say, if somebody has ever been on both of this and Luigi's, again, it is not even really themed much. But it is very interesting to watch because there are several different tracks. So this,
I guess maybe real quick for people that aren't familiar with what Aquatopia is. So, in America we have Autopia, which is the cars. So in Japan, they don't have that, but they have at Disney Sea, they have Aquatopia, which is it's water, obviously, aqua. Mm-hmm. So you're on these cars.
It almost looks like a shell, doesn't it? Kind of.
Yeah. I think if I remember correctly, it's kind of like a shell or some sort of vessel, and it's all, I don't know, maybe like a foot of water or something that you're navigating through. Mm-hmm. And then there are like water cannons that spray you. Mm-hmm. There's different things that the cars,
you're getting shot at with water.
Yeah, but the cars spin and go in different directions. And you don't know where they're going to go.
No idea. They weave amongst each other, and we were having a good time waiting in line trying to figure out, because you could actually see like on the Trackless like the floor.
With
could
all
see,
of them, you can kind of,
you
the
could,
cars go in the same way every single time.
Yeah,
they
but you
make
could,
a little rut.
so you can see like the little ruts and stuff. So we were trying to figure out where they were going, and we still could not figure it out.
Yeah, but to your point, it's a pretty basic ride. Like there's not, if you just looked at it, you might not even know it's a trackless ride because they seem to be doing a similar motion every time. But until you actually sit down and watch it and try to, oh, what's that path? Oh wait, they've never gone on the same path twice. Then you kind of notice it. But yeah, it's a pretty basic ride overall.
It is. I think that maybe why I rank it so high here was I think when we rode it,
it's kind of middle of the pack.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, I feel like it might be a little, like, even now I'm like, should I have put it over the other two? But I think that maybe it was just because when we rode it, one, it's different. It's not in any of the other parks. And two, it was really humid in Tokyo when we were there, so it was very refreshing to ride this ride. And of course, there's always something like weird about watching other people get soaking wet and like screaming and stuff, and it's enjoyable. So, you like watch them and you're like, I forget what is. There's a German word for that.
There might even be water cannons that you can shoot at people. I like vaguely remember.
Maybe I don't remember that. Yeah,
you can stand in line. Maybe I'm completely making that up.
There's places that you can do that, but I'm not entirely sure.
It might be. Yeah, I don't remember if yeah.
But I don't know. It was just a very enjoyable ride, like an enjoyable concept. And even though it wasn't like specifically Disney themed, I've never seen that particular ride anywhere else I've ever been either.
I would say, I mean, Disney Sea isn't really particularly Disney themed at all. I mean, it's Disney themed in that it's just extremely, extremely themed, not necessarily around Disney. I guess now with
I was gonna say there's several things
with Fantasy Springs now. I mean, that is specifically Disney, but a lot of the attractions really aren't super Disney.
Well, you wouldn't think of them as like a Disney property, like even like 20,000 Leagues.
It's Jules Verne. Yeah, I mean, it's a Jules Verne area.
But I mean, there was an old Disney movie.
Yeah, but still, but it's not like
you don't think of that. Correct. I do not associate that with Disney.
It's not princesses and stuff. Yeah.
My next one is Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Rail. So I think that this ride is a blast. I love it. I love the idea of being in the cartoon, and I struggled putting it as low as this is, but I had to like really think about it and like kind of take some of my own opinion about the ride out of it, because some of these other rides are just so exceptional. And the reason why I dinged this one was that it is relatively straightforward. When you are going down the waterfall, particularly when you go into the scene with like everything fills with water and then you're supposed to be going out and over, the car itself doesn't have any special motion that's different. Like you could almost like in Rise, like you actually drop. And so I almost feel like they could have done something more there, just to sell the believability. I feel like that would have given it that little bit of extra to bump it up. But all in all, this is one of my favorite rides. I love it so much. But I think some of the other ones just are just a little bit better. And my next one up is,
all right. So moving on. So you got your top two left.
Yeah. So my top two.
So what's the runner up?
The runner-up is Pooh's Honey Hunt, which is over in Tokyo Disneyland. And this ride was just so mind-blowing. For me, I wasn't a huge Winnie the Pooh fan when I went on the ride. I was never one of those kids that like grew up watching Winnie the Pooh or anything. But this ride was so exceptional. It made me into a Winnie the Pooh fan. It's hard to even express, but there's so many colors. The use of the trackless ride motion is great. There's a whole scene where you're going through, it's like Winnie the Pooh. First of all, he falls asleep and he dreams, and it's
dream
crazy.
Sequence. Yeah.
And he like does this thing where he topples end over end, and when you watch it, you're like, how is he even moving and spinning in that way? And then he's in this like dream sequence, and you are moving through his dream, and the cars are weaving all over the place. You don't know where you're gonna go next. There's like funhouse mirrors and cool, like interesting, almost Dr. Seussian type creatures. I know that there's a specific like Winnie the Pooh that this is referencing, but yeah, it is just so fun and such a really well done ride that I would love to go on it again and again and again and again.
So I'm surprised. So you're putting Rise of the Resistance on top.
And I'm putting Rise up there because even though it is not like my absolute favorite, because my real preference is like, my real preference
So,
is
so
no,
what's
hang
your
on.
absolute favorite then?
No, but
Yeah.
here's what it is, and you're gonna make the same argument too. It's not the one that to me is the most exciting. To me, it's not the one that I like the most because I'm more of a cartoon person, even though I love Star Wars. But what they have done with the Trackless Ride in Rise of the Resistance is next level, because they've taken it and they've changed it just from riding a basic trackless ride, which again, they're already awesome, but they've taken it, they've added other elements to other things. And like you mentioned before, the scale, when you go in and you see the AT-ATs and you're moving through that scene, it's incredible. I think the animatronic of General Beck, even in the very beginning, it kind of helps to set the tone, and he's really good. I love, like, I think he's a calamarian. I think he's so interesting to look at. That whole scene where you're in that vehicle and it's moving around is fun. And then you get onto the trackless ride vehicle and then you do the fall and you see Kylo Ren, and that's a really cool animatronic as well. So like, everything all together, the only thing that I will again ding it for is the fact that the cannons used to move and they stopped having them move, because that really, when the ride opened, that really added just another level to that ride.
It's that ride's Yeti. I mean, it's the same thing that
it's
happened with
100%
Everest.
that ride's Yeti, where
Yeah.
it's just like you were weaving in and out in your trackless ride vehicle and it feels perilous, and then they disabled the guns, and I'm sure the reason probably is that was probably what kept breaking down.
Right.
But it is a frustration knowing that they used to move and knowing how much it added, and now it's not there. But
They should have
still,
some strobe lighting effects to them to give some semblance of movement. That's what they did with the Yeti.
yeah, but all in all, I mean, it is a really fantastic ride, and I think it deserves to be up there at number 1. Or does it? Dun, dun, dun.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's the list. That's all we've written.
All right. So I cheated. You know, I cheated, and I didn't watch.
So it's really not number 1.
So I have a secret number 1 though,
Okay.
because
one that we've never written.
Yeah, and it's one we've never written. But you were commenting at the very beginning about how when you haven't ridden these, there is like an element that you don't understand.
Yeah.
I watched the video and I was convinced it was the best one. So I can only imagine what it would be like to ride it.
And which one's that?
And that's Mystic Manor. Mystic Manor looks incredible.
I mean,
So
I
first of all,
only heard good things about it.
First of all, the exterior of Mystic Manor is insane. The color scheme, it's like a really interesting, it's like yellow and purple and green. There's like tile on the ground outside of the ride. The style of the building is really interesting, where they have like interesting roofs that look like Hershey Kisses, and it's just a really interesting building.
And just for a little context, we mentioned this is at Hong Kong, but this is basically their version of Haunted Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have a Haunted Mansion in Hong Kong, but they made a Haunted Mansion style ride. And a lot of it is like around like Chinese culture. Like they don't.
It's like ghosts.
Ghosts
like
and things. Yeah.
Ghosts and things, I think, that are something that they don't like really do.
Yeah, exactly. So they didn't want to do like a straight Haunted Mansion. With ghosts and stuff, and even in like this Mystic Manor, like there are no ghosts in it, but like it's basically their version of that.
Yeah, and so the ride itself is it's interesting because I was watching it, even though it is Haunted Mansion, I could see almost like nods, things that remind me very much of other Disney rides besides just Haunted Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
It also reminded me, like there were scenes that reminded me of like you moving through funny vignettes that reminded me of Pirates of the Caribbean. There were also tikis, like talking tikis, which reminded me of the tiki room. But the basic story behind it, and this is one of the reasons why I picked it, because I think it's so interesting, is there's a monkey. He is a resident of Mystic Manor, and he opens it seemed like a cursed box, and when he opens it, magic escapes, and a whole bunch of the artifacts in Mystic Manor then come to life and start to move around. They cause problems, and you are moving through these scenes of like funny things happening, or even like there are armor, and the armor is singing, and it's super interesting, and the monkey is getting in trouble. And
Well, there's projection mapping
there's
in it.
there's
I mean, I found
projection.
out Danny Elfman did the score for the attraction, so I mean, it works on a lot of levels.
Oh, and there's like a pole scene where it's almost like circle vision. Like they have a room where there's screens on every single wall, and then one of the walls blows out, kind of like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Rail. It's a really interesting story. It's all in English too. Like it's an interesting story of like this monkey going through and trying, like, kind of getting in trouble and trying to catch and like get this curse back in the box. It's really fun. So
I think the good news is, if you believe the rumors, that's what the Encanto attraction is going to be at Animal Kingdom, is that they're basically taking Mystic Manor, because it's, hey, a curse going through a house, crazy things happening in different rooms of a house. Kind of sounds like Encanto, with the casita and everything. So that's kind of the early rumor, is that that's basically what that attraction is going to be. So
I would love a trackless ride vehicle in that.
Yeah. So if you're that impressed by it, just watching the video of it, that I think that bodes well.
And I do think the other part of it that makes me like it even more, and I am not one of the people that says, Disney, stop putting your IP in the parks. Like, I am not one of those people. I love Disney movies. I love Disney characters. I don't want them to stop putting their IP in the parks. But the thing about this ride that makes it special is that they've created something new. This is a character that does not exist in a movie.
Well, it ties into C.
And it ties into C. But again, that's all lore that exists in the parks. It's not, and you don't know about it. It's not on a show really, unless I think they mention it in the Jungle Cruise movie.
Well, again, it's nice they made this one without IP, but Disney doesn't do anything without IP now. So again, in Animal Kingdom, hey, you want Mystic Manor stateside? We're putting Encanto in it though.
I think it'll be great though.
No,
and
it
it
will
is again
allegedly. I'm not sure if that's going to be the ride or not.
I am an advocate. That's what I'm gonna stand behind my Indiana Jones thing about Animal Kingdom and say, let California have Indiana Jones. I don't need an Indiana Jones ride. I don't need this here. Someday I hope to make it to Hong Kong to get on this ride, but let them have that, and that can be their thing.
Yeah, again, maybe Encanto's not Mystic Manor, but that's kind of, again, the rumor on it, at least at this point. I think the thing about Mystic Manor is everybody says it's great, so I think, like, you saw the video, it looks awesome. I think it would be even better in person. So, I mean, it's like, I don't think it's one of those situations where, again, you don't get a great feel for it. Like, when I saw the Beauty and the Beast attraction, the Enchanted Tales Beauty and the Beast, when I first saw it, it didn't really seem that great from just a ride through video, but I could imagine actually being there and having, because there's no, you don't, again, feel the motion of the vehicles. You don't kind of get that added dimension to it. So I could see adding that. Whereas I think, Mystic Manor is one that presents well on a video because there's a lot going on, and I've just heard really good things about it across the board.
And just like, I can almost even guess, not having ridden it, but there's a scene that's sort of like, I think there's a scene like this in the Mummy ride in the Universal, where a whole bunch of scarab, or maybe it's even a whole bunch of scarab beetles. I think that actually happens in Indiana Jones over in Disneyland, where there's the scarab beetles and they crawl everywhere, and then you could feel like things blowing on you. There's a similar scene where there's a whole bunch of like beetles, and I'm like imagining as you're riding that they're probably doing something to make you feel like those bugs are crawling on you. So even that, like, I could tell that there was even more to the ride than what I was able to see only using one of my senses. So yeah, it just looks like a great ride.
All right, so you cheated. You put a ride that we've never ridden, number one, otherwise on your list. All right, so getting to my list, actually very similar, kind of surprised to your overall ranking. So I actually have Remy's Ratatouille Adventure last on my list.
You were more ruthless than me on that one.
Yeah, so I have that one lowest on my list. Now, for me, I kind of looked at the use of the trackless ride technology and like the overall story and theming, that sort of thing. For Remy, I just feel like it's kind of a rehash of the movie, so it's not necessarily like a super unique story or an original story or anything.
Sort of a similar. You're making the opposite argument to make it so low as I did for Mystic Manor putting it so high, because that was its own story, its
Right,
own thing. And
right.
you're saying this is just them saying what happened in the movie.
And most of these are like original stories, like for these. So, and the other thing is like, I don't think like it really doesn't need to be a trackless ride. Like there's nothing that it does other than that you have like multiple cars going through at one time that it needs to be a trackless ride. It's not moving in kind of any unique way. Like it's not doing like a dance number like they do in Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. It's not, it's pretty linear in the way it moves. You're not doing any sort of like spins. Yes, the cars do move some to give you motion on the screens. I think that's why, but like it could very easily also have been like over at Universal Studios, the Spider-Man attraction or the Transformers attraction, where those cars move, but they're on a track, so you're going through a mix of sets and screens, but you're on a track on a ride vehicle that moves. That basically Remy does that. It just doesn't have the track there. So like there's no real reason it had to be a trackless ride. So I don't think it utilized the technology very well. So that's why I have it last. My next one is Luigi's. So that one, it's weak on story. To your point, it's a pretty basic attraction. There is some re-rideability because you don't know what song you're going to get. But I think this utilizes the technology very well. And the fact that it's exciting because you don't know where you're going to go. If you kind of compare this to basically what it is in the non-trackless ride form, like Alien Swirling Saucers, where this is basically just a flat kind of spinner ride. In Alien Swirling Saucers, you know where you're going to go, and it gets boring after 30 seconds because you're kind of just spinning around. Like,
boring? Alien Swirling Saucers is a great ride. I would actually argue it's better than Slinky Dog, but hey, you know what? Fine. Go ahead.
It's not
Go
better than
ahead,
Slinky
be a
Dog.
hater. Whatever.
It just gets very repetitive because you can see where you're going, you know where you're going to go. It's kind of the same thing over and over again. Whereas, Luigi is a similar thing. You're kind of just moving in circles, but because it's a trackless ride, you don't know where you're going to go. And so it can make unexpected turns. And, at some points it accelerates really quick and stops and turns and spins you. And that's just a lot of fun. It's a more intense attraction because of the use of the technology. So I'm putting that one on at 5. Maybe 4. I think the next couple I think are somewhat
That's
interchangeable.
cheating. You just gotta stick with it.
All right, I'll say 5. I'll stick that at 5. Aquatopia is my next one. I have that at 4. And again, this one, it adds such an unexpected element. So we kind of talked about it, what it is. It's a pretty basic attraction. I do think like you, some of it is just,
we were in a different place.
Yeah, and like the memory of it and everything. And when we went, it was the summer. It was very hot, so it was a lot of fun.
So it was an enjoyable ride
to go on and get wet. But like I just remember that riding it and being like, okay, we're gonna go over here, and then all of a sudden we make a turn and there's a water jet that just sprays us. And like I think we had like a jacket and we were trying to like block ourselves because we didn't want to get soaking wet because it shoots you water like right in your face.
Yep.
And then in other instances,
and I was trying to protect my mascara.
Yeah, and then in other instances, there's like a water jet and we think we're gonna go towards it and we're like getting prepared, and then all of a sudden you go in a different path and you're spinning around, and there's like 40 of these vehicles out there at any given time, and so you don't know, like you passing people and you don't know, am I gonna get hit with that water or you like what's gonna happen? And it adds such an insane level of unpredictability. And even though, like you said, you can kind of see the track, you don't really know where you're gonna go on it. And it was something special and magical about it that, like, again, the use of the technology and everything, just it was so unexpected. It was so much fun. Like I always remember that attraction.
You know what? It also, like you kind of brought this up, and I want to like kind of highlight this because I think maybe this is part of the reason why I also put it a little bit higher than maybe some people might. And it was when you pass by the other cars, you could see how much everybody else who was riding it was also enjoying it. People were laughing and like wiping the water off, and if you were facing each other, even like you would give a little wave. Like I don't know, there was just like an interesting like feeling
there was a camaraderie
of like,
about it.
Camaraderie about the ride, and like everyone was in this state of like, oh, am I gonna get wet? Oh, look at you got soaked. Like hi, like we're riding the same ride. I don't know. There was just something like magical about it. And I think that you encapsulated that really well.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a switch here. I'm gonna make a last minute switch on mine just because our lists were pretty similar. And again,
wow. So you can't agree with me?
No, and some of these for me, like they could kind of go
They're
either way.
interchangeable.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go Pooh's Honey Hut next. You know, you mentioned a lot of the reasons why it's such an incredible attraction. I think another reason, and I think why I may be bumping it down, because same with kind of Aquatopia, I feel like some of it is colored by the nostalgia and the memories of it, because this was the first trackless ride we ever rode, because this was before Rise of the Resistance opened. This was before Remy came stateside. We had not ridden Luigi's at DCA. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway wasn't open.
Yeah.
I mean, Pooh's Honey Hunt was actually the first trackless ride Disney built 20 some years ago, which is insane that it's still one of the top 3 trackless rides. The fact that like it was the original and it crushes like Remy. Like if you compare it to Remy, like it absolutely crushes it. It's amazing. So I think there was some of that of like, this was something so new to us when we rode it, and it was something so amazing. And I do remember, like you mentioned, that dream sequence where, you know, all the cars are kind of in a line up until that point, and then you go into this huge room, and I think this is where, you know, it's similar to kind of like the dancing scene in Mickey and Minnie's, but they did it better, because not only is it your group of 3 cars, but it's like the group of cars in front of you. So now all of a sudden, you know, you've been in this group of 3 cars, and now all of a sudden you're in a huge room with 6 cars, and you're like, where did these other people come from? You're interacting with their vehicles in this dance. You know, they go off, a new group comes in, you kind of interact with, and it becomes this whole thing of like, I don't know what is happening.
I don't know where I'm going.
I don't know where I'm going. Where did all these other people come from? And like, that's where like Mickey and Minnie doesn't do it as good, because you're always with your group. And Pooh's Honey Hunt, it just added something so spectacular. And again, so it was something that like you go into it and you're like, this is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
What I feel like is more amazing about it too is it's in Japanese. You have no idea what they're saying, no idea what's going on, but you can still kind of follow the story and still have so much fun with it, that I think it's just a testament to how great of an attraction this is. I might be talking myself back into putting it at number 2, but I think I'm going to keep it at number 3 here.
This is shocking. So I'm not looking at my list anymore. So is your number 2 Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway?
Yeah, so Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is second for me, and I think I'm putting it second again because I think Pooh's Honey Hunt, while it's a great attraction, is a little bit of memory for me. And if I'm looking at, okay, what's use of technology and story kind of together, Pooh's Honey Hunt is The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, basically the same story and ride essentially that they have at Walt Disney World. Tokyo just said, we want something better than that. Like we want
so much better.
We want that attraction. We just want you to do it better. So that's why it's a trackless ride there. So it's not necessarily an original story. So I think if I'm kind of being a little nitpicky here to kind of differentiate the two, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway has a great use of the trackless ride technology. It is great how, you know, it's an interesting idea where you are a train and actually, you know, the front of your ride vehicle actually disappears for part of the ride. Like that's a cool use of it. It is cool where you go into these rooms, like you said, and you're kind of split apart. Like I feel like Remy doesn't do that again. Like you're always kind of really close together with all of your other mice, cars in there. Whereas Mickey, the train, like they're spreading apart. You know, you start in the back, you end up in the front. You kind of move around a little bit in there, and it's an original story, and just the animation style of it and everything is so phenomenal with the projection mapping that like I feel like it is just that much better than Pooh's Honey Hunt.
The one thing that I would say to like kind of play the devil's advocate here, and I could make a different argument against myself, but Pooh's Honey Hunt incorporates a lot of animatronics. That for me is where Remy's falls really short, because there isn't a whole lot, like a lot of Remy's is on screen, where I don't like Pooh's Honey Hunt. I think there's a lot of things that are coming out, like character pieces and things that are 3-dimensional as opposed to being on a flat screen. And then Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway also is pretty flat. A lot of it's on screens. There at the very end, we get the picnic scene. And so you do have
There's
like
animatronics
and then you do
There's
get
animatronics
yeah, I guess
throughout.
you get the tornado, and I guess you get the plant. But there aren't a lot.
No, there's the tornadoes are animatronics. You have in the water scene, there's animatronics there.
Yeah, that's the plant. I think there's a plant there.
No,
isn't
it's
there?
Mickey and Minnie. They're
Okay.
animatronics. You have Daisy as an animatronic, and you have the picnic scene
All
at the
right,
end.
all right. Yeah, you got me there.
I
Okay.
would think there's probably just as many as in Pooh's Honey Hunt.
But the one thing that maybe you could say like does elevate it, just to kind of go with you, and I didn't say this, there's like A, B, and C stories in Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which is really interesting because
there's all the animatronics in the scene right before the dance scene. You have Pete using the jackhammer and everything.
You got
there's a
me,
lot
you
there.
got-
I'm
you
just
got
I'm
me.
just thinking of more
Donald,
and more.
yeah. But yeah, so you have different stories too. So it does up the rewritability, because if you don't pay attention to Mickey and Minnie and you pay attention to what's going on with Pluto, or you watch Chubby, like
there's more.
There's
more in
more
there.
going on in that ride
Again.
than what is like standing out.
That much better. Not a lot. That much better. Maybe tomorrow it might be the other way.
Yeah.
But that much better. So number one for me, Rise of the Resistance. I was surprised you put it so high. I think that's how good of an attraction it is.
I think
that
objectively it is the best one.
I think that's how good of an attraction it is that even you could not make an argument for it not being number one. You had to kind of make up this fake excuse of like, I watched a ride video on the internet and I'm making that number one, even though I've never been on it. But that's how impressive of a ride it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say even after watching the ride video, as much as I hyped it, I still think Rise is probably better.
Yeah, and I think it's so good because of everything they have in it. It's the biggest scale.
Oh, I forgot about walking in and seeing all the stormtroopers.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that
it's,
part
it's
is
being
crazy.
in a movie. It's the whole thing. It's the use of the trackless ride. Original story. It's an original story in that we've not seen that specific story on screen, but I understand it's based kind of on Star Wars, so maybe not super original. You can make some argument about, but like there's just everything. The integration of cast members as part of it, of like the fact that
that they're rude to you
Well,
because
but-
they're
the fact that like the loading
yeah.
of the vehicle is
and resistance
in
fighters.
theme, but it's
Yeah.
in theme. Like what ride is kind of in theme to get you from a pre-show into the ride vehicle and then off the ride vehicle and everything. Like it's complete well themed. I think it's no surprise based on the amount of money they spent on that it actually like turned out that well. And I do think it's somewhat of an interesting case study because it's like, hey, if you spend the money, it's gonna be super good. Like they can make really good attractions, but it's gonna cost them so much money that like they can't make everything that good, you know. But when they do it and everything clicks and they kind of take the best of everything they've learned, it just comes out phenomenal. And again, even if you're not a Star Wars fan, you can't ride that attraction and just not be impressed by everything that's happening to you, because again, like with the pre-show, you don't even realize you're on the ride because you're just thinking, what is this? Like, oh, I'm on a ship now. That's just part of the ride. Like, it's not until after you're over, you're like, wait, that whole thing like was an attraction? Like all of this was kind of part of it. Like all of this was themed.
Like how you get evacuated. Like you go into the spot, you get spotted, and then the resistance fighters like break you out and cut through the wall. Like
if you don't know what's going on,
crazy.
You might think the ride broke. You'd be like, wait, what happened? I'm in this room now. Like with this wall
it's
just opened up.
insane.
Yeah. So I think for all of those reasons, it is the best trackless ride. I think it's the best attraction Disney has ever done up until this point. And it's going to, I think, be probably a long time before they make something better, because they're not going to spend that kind of money on doing that. Maybe the sixth iteration of the Avengers ride that they announce when they finally build that, maybe they'll have something that kind of blows us away. But until that point, I think this is number one.
I think there's some breaking Disney news that just came in. The 6th iteration was announced.
Josh Tomorrow announced that. So, but that wraps up the show for this week. Would love to hear our listeners. What's your favorite trackless ride? Maybe it's one of the ones that we haven't had a chance to ride. You're like, hey, it's actually so much better than Rise of the Resistance.
They said if you watched one trackless ride vehicle, why did you not watch this one instead?
love to hear from you. Let us know if you're watching this on YouTube. Let us know in the comments. You can also let us know on Instagram. We're at Enchanted Ears Podcast over there. Would love to hear from you. But that wraps up the show for this week. I want to thank everybody again for listening. If you've not done so, please leave us a rating or a review. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. It really helps, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for lending us your ears.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you here next Monday.
Bye-bye.